Good afternoon, Greg.
Hey, Keith, good to see you again.
That's what you say every week. Is it really good to see?
And I mean it.
I always enjoy seeing you too. So, I was thinking, and as I said to you earlier in the day, what's really a focus for us and has become a focus recently is young entrepreneurs, which we started,
Right.
that segment a couple of weeks ago. And I wanted to really understand, who are the entrepreneurs today? What are their ages? Are they more inclined to become entrepreneurs based on when they were born? So I did a little Google search and, I don't like to really read things, but I'm going to read it anyway so I don't mess it up. So millennials, okay, are more apt to start businesses in their 20s and their 30s and mid 30s, which is earlier than people from our generation, which generally was
Yeah.
in the 30s to 40s.
Right.
You know,
Usually went out and got some experience working for a company, right? And
right?
then started your own business.
Yeah. So I don't. It's interesting because the younger generation that lives online, they've had smartphones forever.
Mhm. Yeah, they were born with them.
Right. We didn't have any cell phones. I think they came out, the phone was actually attached to their hand. So, they're so much more exposed from an early age to e-commerce,
Mhm.
technology overall, and there's that interest to control their own destiny. Now, the question that I have, as we start to speak with, younger entrepreneurs, is the risk factors. Are you really ready for business ownership? So, obviously, I want your thoughts on that as well, because you started as an entrepreneur, an older, what would be considered an older entrepreneur. I went into business, let's see, my first business was 1982. So I was 25.
Okay.
I
So you
believe
were a young entrepreneur.
I was truly a young entrepreneur. So the question is that were you even thinking about it, entrepreneurship, when you were 25?
No, no. I would have never taken the risk at that age to own my own business. I had a family, young family. Um, and I thought the best way to provide was, through working a job. So that's what I did. It wasn't until I got later in life when I really felt more freedom to be able to take a bigger risk.
Now, do you think that if you were 25 today, given that you would have grown up with, the digital revolution, would you have felt that same angst and stress about taking the leap?
Uh, I think so. I still think I would have felt, because it didn't have anything to do with technology or um, anything like that. It was really, and I think it's the biggest thing a business owner faces, and you said it right when we started. It's the risk factor. How much risk are you willing to accept, live with in your life? And back then, I just, I suppose I could think up a scenario where, if everything had been lined up, like it would have had to almost like landed in my lap. A relative would have had to say, "Hey, can you just take this business for me?" Then
Right.
maybe I would have done something like that. But to go out and really start a business from scratch or buy a business, I just, I wouldn't have felt comfortable with that being my only uh, income stream when I was that age.
Now, do you think it's because you had a young family, or like
Yeah.
if you were married with no kids when you were 25?
Yeah, that would be different. That would
Right.
be different, I would say. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah,
yeah,
because I didn't have children when I went into business,
right.
so
Mhm.
but I,
Eh,
I'm such a risk taker, so I don't even know whether that would have stopped me.
Keith, let me ask you a question along this line, because we're talking about entrepreneurs and business owners. And do you, just from your perspective, are those two words interchangeable? Do you think all business owners are entrepreneurs?
No, no, I think they can be both, but not every business owner is an entrepreneur.
I would agree.
But I would say every entrepreneur is a business owner.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the reason I mean, I don't even know if I'm right. I'm saying that that's my belief. I'd have to look it up. I believe that you start a business. Like I opened up my first optical store. Okay. I wanted to be in business. Now,
Mhm.
if all I wanted was one business, okay, I didn't want, to expand, and I didn't see, a vision of like being, the McDonald's of the optical industry. I don't think I would have considered myself an entrepreneur. I think I would have just considered myself a business owner, you know, and the
Sure,
business person, I mean, just
sure.
businessman. I mean, that would be the extent of that. I wouldn't walk around and say, "Oh, well, I'm an entrepreneur." So I equate entrepreneurship to one starting a business and being willing to expand upon your initial vision into, growing that business in a larger way. And I don't, by the way, as I talk through it, it's interesting. I'm not sure I'm right. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. I know I worked for uh, an individual who was an entrepreneur. He started a company. It was a division that was spun off from a larger company. And he was in his 50s and he was absolutely an entrepreneur. Everything you would think about as a definition of an entrepreneur, that was him. He had 20 ideas, every day, a lot of them bad ideas, going in a lot of different directions. He owned more than one company. He
Ah,
was, Tom was an entrepreneur.
that
What
so
the
the more than one
last
company,
job, I'm sorry.
the more than one company gives me
Yeah,
the sense that
yeah,
so now and I apologize for interrupting you, but I wanted to make this point because
yeah.
there's the entrepreneurship, there's a level of like more than one of something.
Mhm.
And again, I don't know if I'm right, but before we're done, I'm going to look it up. So, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, and then I was gonna say, I worked for a guy back 10 years ago who was a business owner, took it over from his father. And I wouldn't define him as an entrepreneur. He was a business owner. He didn't have this grand vision of, making the business bigger or better, or, he had some growth plans, but he just wasn't, I wouldn't call it, he was risk averse, right? He was, he wanted to make sure he kept what he had within the business, and the risks were kind of at the outer edges versus the other individual, Tom, I was talking about. He was definitely a risk taker. And I think that's, I think of entrepreneurship as risk taking. That's one of the things I think that it would have to be in the definition of an entrepreneur.
All right. So I just looked up the dictionary, uh, you know, what
Definition.
entrepreneur definition, right? So a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses taking on greater than normal financial risks in order to do so. So it is the financial risk aspect. It's like, okay, I got a little optical store in, some town somewhere, and It's nice and small. I keep it small. My wife and I run it. It's mom and pop kind of thing. I didn't take on some like large burden above what it just takes to open up a store. Where I became an entrepreneur is when I took it from, I want to open up store 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And by the
Yeah.
way, crazy, they didn't necessarily do it in the order like that. I think I told that story of,
Right.
It's a level of, well, I should say it's a desire to take risks, okay,
Yeah.
in order to
Yeah.
achieve a larger goal.
Yeah. Yep. And I think also around this, Keith, is it's not a you are or you aren't an entrepreneur. I think it's a scale, right? There's a scale that people fall on, and some people fall way to the entrepreneurship side, way to the risk-taking side. Other business owners, are probably way at the other end. But there's a lot of them who are probably in the middle, where they do have entrepreneurship tendencies, but they wouldn't consider themselves entrepreneurs if you ask them.
I still go back to a mindset. So it's
Mhm.
mindset
I
forward
agree.
and a willingness to take on risks that go above and beyond your typical risk of going into business.
Right.
And it's basically that desire. You actually envision you being larger at some point, like having business number 2 or having multiple business, not necessarily even in the same industry.
Right.
You become more of like an investor. It's like, I own, a restaurant, but I also, bought a car wash.
Yeah, I have a portfolio of businesses.
Correct,
Right.
correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
So that's true entrepreneurship.
And I think the other thing is when we look at your example, you started your business from scratch,
Yeah,
right? I think that's what entrepreneurs do is they start businesses from scratch. Business owners, if we're talking about business owners who aren't entrepreneurs, probably buy an existing business. Maybe they buy it from mom and dad or a relative. Maybe they buy it on the open market, but it's a going concern business, right? There's revenue streams, there's a team in place. You can buy a business like that, not be an entrepreneur or not have a lot of entrepreneurial qualities, and you can own and run that business. Right?
yeah. So and again, that goes to the risk factor. Do I want to start
Right.
from scratch where I have to do everything?
Yeah.
It's build or buy. Okay.
Right.
That's really
Yeah. Yeah.
they put it. So whoever the they is. I love when we tend to say as humans, they said, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I find it very interesting that there's more of a tendency for people to take the leap because in a digital world, going into business is not that complex. Sure, there's some of the basics, you want to form a company, so you have to, file corporate papers, unless you're going to be just, a sole proprietor where you wouldn't have to
Right.
create a corporation. But literally, you can create a website and be up and running, in a few days.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no doubt the one impact technology has had is I would say it has reduced the cost of owning a business. Now, not in every case, but as you just said, right, if you can get a website up and going, and again, it depends on what your business is. If you're providing a service or you're selling product, if you're selling product, you might still have inventory and that sort of issues to deal with. But if you're a service provider and you have a website, which is where you're going to do most of your business, it's a lot cheaper to start a website than it is to build a building. Or remember, in your case, you talked about having to do a build out, lease a building. Not only is it quicker, but it's less expensive to get up and going.
Yeah.
And if the investment is less, the risk is less. Right? You know, you asked me that question before about starting a business when I was 25. If it didn't cost much, maybe I would have when it was 25. When
Okay,
I
so
was
that's
25.
good. I'm glad you
But
went back on that, because truthfully, you could have started a coaching business, not bought a franchise, and you could have said, you know what, while I'm working,
yeah.
okay, I'm going to start coaching.
Mhm.
I feel I know my craft very well, and I think I can help people. So you could have started a side business. It's almost like a music teacher doing private lessons and starting a
Yeah.
private lesson, you know.
Right. A side gig.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and
Side
side
hustle.
gigs today, that we live in what's called now the gig economy.
Right.
You know, the
Yeah.
kids go, yeah, I got a gig, you know. Well, but
Yeah.
it's amazing how much it's changed.
Right.
So, which brings me to the other thing we were talking about earlier is like, when you're starting a business and you have no experience, you need people that can guide you.
Absolutely, Keith. And I was just gonna to make that point. You said to me just a minute ago, well, when you were 25, you could have started a coaching business at that point. No, I couldn't. Who would want to be coached by a 25-year-old who knew nothing? I might have thought I knew a lot, but I didn't know crap, really, right? I had to I had to learn that over 30 plus years of experience to get to where I am today, to where now I can say, you know what? I can coach other business owners, entrepreneurs, business leaders because of the experience I've developed over the years. But you're absolutely right. There is a need out there for young entrepreneurs, especially, I think, to have some guidance, some trusted advisor to help them work through the pitfalls of business ownership, of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting as you're talking, I'm thinking of an analogy. It's like, you remember when you became a father for the first time.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember it like it was yesterday, and we both have kids they're in their 30s.
Yeah.
And who did you go to? You went to your parents. You know, when it's like, what do I do with this kid? He won't stop crying, or she won't stop crying. So really, when you start a business, it's like having a baby.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to make it such a, like an analogy that people wouldn't understand, but that is your baby. You have to raise it from, the beginning. If you start a business from scratch, you're basically raising this business to be strong, smart, agile, and successful.
Right. And we've talked before about being willing to hear criticism of your baby, because that's how we make our business better. If we have a bunch of yes people around us who just tell us what we want to hear, our business isn't going to get any better. It isn't going to get any stronger. We aren't going to grow. We're all we've got is somebody telling us, yeah, you're doing the right thing, as opposed to challenging us as business owners. That's what a good trusted advisor does, is they challenge a business owner. They make sure that they're looking at all the alternatives, right? And they're really getting them to think differently about their business. Now, trusted advisors aren't the decision makers. The business owner is ultimately the decision maker. But hearing hearing an outside perspective is really valuable.
Because it's not coming from an opinion, it's coming from experience.
Right.
It's like, if you have an opinion about something, nobody, okay, I disagree with your opinion, but if I've done something where I can say, look, I did this, and here's what worked and what didn't work.
Keith, I've sat in leadership team meetings where everybody sits and waits to hear what the owner has to say. And then everybody goes, yeah, I think the same thing, right? Because they don't want to create the conflict. They don't want to disagree. As I always tell business owners, they should speak last, not first, in their leadership team, because they should hear all of the opinions. But even if you've got a well-functioning leadership team, they still all have the perspective of they're in the business, right? A business coach can come from the outside and look at the business and have a completely different perspective because they're not there day to day working in the business. They're looking at it from a much different perspective, typically a much broader perspective.
Yeah, no question. And the amount of people that are taking the plunge earlier provides even a greater need for trusted advisors, coaches, consultants, because the risks of not having them outweigh the costs of having them.
I think you're right. And I know it can be, for a business owner, it can be they look at the cost of bringing on somebody like that as a contractor to their business. But you're right. They don't think about the benefit they're going to get from that. Because peel back away just for a second. And if I told you as a business owner, hey Keith, if you invested $25,000 or $30,000 this year, and you could earn an extra $50,000 because of that investment, would you do that?
Well,
You'd be stupid not to, wouldn't you?
right.
Right. So that's what I think.
Play devil's advocate, because that's what the kids, that we're talking to now, including our own. It's like, well, can you guarantee me that I'm going to make another $20,000? And what if I don't? What if the 30,000 I did less business? Okay, so to really break that down, there's so many aspects to coaching somebody with experience and giving them a game plan that's been proven.
So Keith, anytime in business, I mean, you just said to me, what's your guarantee? Well, you know what? If I run a manufacturing facility and I'm going to buy a new piece of equipment for $100,000, there's no guarantee I'm going to get a return on that. None. The company I bought it from isn't going to guarantee it. They'll guarantee that the equipment's going to work the way it's supposed to work. But it's up to me now as the business owner to take that asset of mine and turn it into create a return, right? So now I've got to go out and maybe I've got to create a market, or I've got to get customers, or I've got to, manufacture a new product on that piece of equipment. There are no guarantees. Now, I think there's ways that we can formulate relationships, whether it's a piece of equipment or a resource that we're working with, to ensure a high level of success.
So the word you just used, it's interesting, the word ensure. So, I look at a coach or a consultant as an insurance policy. Now, the reason we have, car insurance or health insurance, okay, it's really to protect yourself against a very bad thing, okay, that could happen, that could wipe you out. So there's risk reward factors. If I'm running, a little website, and I only care about doing a few thousand a month to make some extra money, I don't need a coach or a consultant.
Right.
But if I'm running a business, that has significant upside and has a certain amount of fixed overhead, okay, in order for it to run efficiently and effectively, I got to look at what's my downside. What does a major mistake look like? Okay, if I don't ensure that I have somebody that could stop me from doing that, so
Sure.
it's you and I are not saying that everybody needs a coach or a consultant, because we know that's not true. That would be disingenuous.
Right.
But I think that when we talk to a potential client, we're not trying to sell them something they don't need.
Right.
And that's why we have our initial consultation, and we understand their business. We understand, where they're at in business. Did they just get started? Okay, or they've been in business for a couple of years. We ask the questions about the different areas of their business that they're struggling with. They're struggling with sales. Is it marketing? Is it finance? Is it, employee, culture? I mean, there's so many different things that new business owners have to think about that they may not see. Again, we talk about the third eye of an outsider. The value proposition we bring is that if we could provide you with knowledge that will avoid some catastrophic event, will be paid for many times over.
So I think, Keith, we both touched on two reasons why a business owner might want to have a business coach. One is because they're an entrepreneur, they like to take risks. They're going to make an investment in coaching to grow their business. The second was, hey, I'm going to make this investment because I want to make sure that I avoid making some kind of big mistake that's really going to cost me. That's the insurance analogy, right? So those are two very different reasons why you might bring a coach in, both very valid reasons, very good reasons for doing so. And it's all a matter of sort of the mindset of that particular business owner. Hey, I'm new, I got a new business, I'm a young entrepreneur. I want to invest in coaching because I want to grow my business. And I think a business coach would help me do that. Hey, I'm a business owner. I've owned this business for 40 years. I'd like a coach to come in and make sure, number one, am I missing something? Are there some hidden opportunities here that I haven't seen? But two, I want to make sure that I keep what I've got. I'm gonna exit out of this business at some point, and I want to get the most value I can when I sell the business or hand it over to, son or daughter. So both of those are really valid reasons why you might bring in a business coach. Both very different objectives, but both extremely valid.
Yeah, and business coach doesn't have to be, a 12-month engagement.
No.
You may bring in a business coach / consultant to just say, look, I want you to look at my sales team. Okay, 30 days. I want you to be able to deliver a report to me on what you found. Okay, in evaluating my sales manager, the people who he or she is training. I want you to look at our training program. So that's a very specific engagement, okay, that's tied to specific goals of what you want to accomplish, as opposed to someone that does an initial evaluation. The client doesn't know what they're looking for. And, you need to be able to look at every area of the business. This person that I just mentioned, as an example, was very tied into something's not working in my sales department.
Mm-hmm.
But there could be someone they know sales are down. They don't know why. What are they missing? And there's something and that could be a 90-day engagement. These are not like, I got to hire somebody and they're on my books for, for the next 10 years.
Right.
So
right.
I think sometimes there's a misconception about why and when to hire a coach.
Well, and Keith, I've always told clients that, if you're not getting value from my coaching, then you should tell me that. And I may be able to make adjustments to that. But if we've really run the gamut, like if we've really done everything that you wanted to accomplish, then the relationship can be over. Okay. It doesn't have to go on into perpetuity. I think you're right. I think there are coaches and consultants out there who do try to sell long-term agreements. If I was a business owner, I would be wary of that. I would rather have somebody who tells me, you know what, we might work together for 3 months or 3 years, but we'll work together as long as I'm producing value for you. right? And that may change over time. Maybe early on, we're meeting every week, right? We've got a lot to do. We're meeting every week. Maybe after a period of time, we're meeting once a month or once a quarter, right? That looks a lot different from a from a cost standpoint, and it also looks a lot different from the value received. But I think there's a lot of ways to structure coaching agreements so that as a business owner, you're not paying for something you're not getting value from.
Yeah, it's always about, the value proposition and the ROI for the client, and sometimes the ROI is more obvious when it's related to sales. And other times it's, time management issues, where a business owner is like working 60 hours and he can't get out of his own way,
Right.
and he doesn't know why. It's, and then you come in, you look at his office, you see everything's all over the place. There's no organization. And you're a former CFO and a CEO, you start looking at their books and you go, oh my God. It's like, so you see the disorganization is creating not just, a loss of valuable time, but it has to be affecting the bottom line.
Right, right, absolutely. And I think you're right, Keith. You look at some business owners and they are having to work a lot of hours to get the success that they've achieved. So they're working 60 or 70 hours a week. A lot of times they either don't have somebody they can delegate to, or they don't want to delegate. Right? They just want to hold on because somebody else isn't going to do it the same way I do it. Right? So they hold on to that. They don't want to let go. And that's a whole, that could be a whole coaching series right there, like you said.
Well, you got to bring in a therapist as well with that.
But it's not just about the time management. A lot of times it's about if you're a business owner and you're doing everything yourself, how much time are you getting to spend to really work on the business, the vision, right? Where's this business going to go 3 to 5 years from now? How much time are you spending thinking strategically? You're probably putting out fires. You're doing a lot of day-to-day tasks that could easily be delegated to somebody who makes a lot less money than you do, right? And that's an efficient use of time, because now as a business owner, okay, maybe I'm still going to work 60 or 70 hours a week, but you know what? Now I'm not spending my time doing payroll and doing HR compliance and doing administrative tasks. I'm operating at a strategic level. Okay. I'm figuring out how I'm going to get this business to where I want it to be in 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now. That's a very different job task as a business owner than doing the details that really ought to be delegated to somebody else.
The reason that we're even discussing this today is because I believe it's so important for people who are in business to understand when and why you would even consider hiring people with our expertise. And you're right, the point you made before about, who would hire a 25-year-old given the lack of, experience that you had at that stage of your career. Now, of course, because, I'm crazy, I would have found a way to sell the 25-year-old version of me, because I had that kind of confidence in myself, and I've been selling. See, it's very different when you're in sales and you're a natural salesperson. There are things, and it doesn't mean you don't get better as you go along, but there are things you just know. So I think it's easier to sell even someone who's younger that skill, where when it's something like finance and operations and things that really take years and years of expertise of doing those things repetitively, to have the kind of knowledge that you can, share with others. Am I wrong in that?
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. There's certain things as a business coach that I've learned over time, right? And it's been from experiences I've had. It's been through tasks and jobs I've performed, people I've worked for, teams I've been a part of. You know, when I was 25, I would have had 3 years of that experience. Okay? Now I've got, 35, 40 years experience of that. So I've seen a lot of different situations. When I had 3 years of experience, I had seen one situation like that, right? And again, Keith, we're not saying that you should hire young people. We're talking about coaching. We're talking about making sure that you're bringing in somebody who's got, a lot of experience. That doesn't mean they have to be old people, but it just means they've got to have some experience that's really really going to help you as a business owner grow your business. And again, I think there's certain things that experience is kind of the only way we can learn about that.
But the experience, but even in sales, okay, I'm much better today than I was 40 years ago, just because of having experienced all different kinds of sales. And the thing that you get better at is understanding the client,
Yeah.
how to sell them, and to basically not avoid selling you. I was always thinking I'm selling eyeglasses, or I'm selling, processing services or software. I knew I was always selling myself because I sell off of who I am, but I never understood it on that level. I didn't think about it, I'm selling myself. But it took many years of really selling to learn that you are the product first. Because if they don't buy you, they're not buying what you have, because everything's a commodity. It's very unusual that you're selling something that nobody else has. So when I was selling eyeglasses, you can go to 10 stores within 3 miles.
Right.
Go to.
Well, and ultimately, we're trying to create a really positive experience for our customer.
Yeah.
Right. Whether they're buying glasses, which that is going to give them value, right? But as you just said, there's probably 10 other stores that they could have bought those glasses from. They came back to you because you provided them with a certain level of customer support. You created an experience. I'm sure your stores were beautiful to walk into, so they had a good experience right when they walked in the door. They knew if they had a problem, Keith would take care of it, right? So there were all these reasons why they chose your store versus the one down the street, even though the one down the street was selling the exact same pair of glasses, right? And that happens today all the time, right? As consumers, we have so much choice.
Yeah.
Right? But we go back to the companies and the businesses that give us a good experience. Yes, they provide the product we need, the service we need, but they do it in a way that you walk away feeling like, wow, that's really a company I want to do business with.
So really what it comes down to is when you and I are meeting with a client, and we joke it's 2 for the price of 1, because it is. We don't just, say, okay, I can take care of your sales, but if you need something in operations, I'll recommend you to someone. No, we come as a team.
Right.
They may have, specific areas in sales that they need more help in than other areas. But it's like the value add is that, but we're going to look at it anyway. Let's see if the problems in sales are spilling over into your operations and your customer service.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think that when people are going to hire a coach, we were looking for what separates us. So experience, being diverse in our knowledge.
Yeah.
I came in and said, yeah, I do a little bit of sales, and I do understand bookkeeping and accounting. it's like, why would you hire me?
Yeah.
You know, I'm a
Yeah.
jack of all trades, master of nothing.
Yeah.
So it's like, so I think knowing that a business is, you know, a wheel with many spokes, we know that it's not just one thing that needs to be managed.
The other thing I think, Keith, that you and I bring is the fact that we don't assume one size fits all. We
Correct.
know that every business is unique and every business owner is unique. So we need to spend time listening, really listening. And again, I think that's something we're both effective at, is really listening to what their issues are and kind of delving down into those a little deeper to really understand, to really get at the root of the issue. It's easy for somebody to come in and put a Band-Aid on a problem, but Band-Aids don't really solve issues for the long term. The Band-Aid gets pulled off and the wound is exposed again. And it's exposed again and again and again.
And
I
then the
think you and
problem
I,
becomes larger too. So
yeah,
that's,
exactly. Yeah. Where I think you and I come in and really try to get down to the root cause to understand how we can solve an issue permanently as opposed to you know, just for the time being, just until next quarter.
yeah. So as we end this week, you know, I think at least I'll give you my overall thought process is that one, entrepreneurship is not for everybody. You know, there's nothing wrong with being just a business owner. And I think that having a third party perspective, especially if you are someone who wants to be an entrepreneur. Okay, so you're already thinking 3 steps ahead, which is where I was. You know, I was in a very, you know, I was in a mode where I just wanted to move. That's when you really need somebody with experience to come in and go, slow down, you know, and find out what, you know, if a coach comes in or a consultant asks you the right questions, you're going to learn very quickly what you don't know and what's missing.
Right.
So, you know, for me, I think it's really important. You know, we need to know who our customers are, and we can't be everything to everyone. So that's my take. What about you?
Well, you know, I think it's interesting you talked about, you know, being just a business owner, right? Maybe not maybe having that entrepreneurial spirit. Right? And yet, I tell you, if you're a business owner in this day and age, you better be thinking about how you're going to grow your business. Because if you're not, if you're standing still, somebody else is going to come along and like that, pass you up. Right. So I think even if you don't have this entrepreneurial spirit that entrepreneurs have, as a business owner, you still need to find ways to be creative and think about how I'm going to grow my business. Again, maybe that's using a third party to do that with, but it's still critical to be thinking about, you know, how my business is going to grow, because I just think we live in a day and age where if you stand still, you will be passed by, and it will happen before you even know it.
Yeah, very, very quickly.
The speed of business today, Keith, is a lot different than when you and I first started.
Yeah, I think the young entrepreneurs are really anxious to make their way in the world, you know, and they're not sitting back waiting. No,
they're not.
You know, first of all, they're very tech savvy, so you know they're already thinking about how can I improve upon this, that, and the other thing, and how can I beat my competition. They see the competition and they go, how is this person, you know, doing so well? You know, I could do it better.
Right.
Now, they may be wrong, they may be right. Nobody really knows, but
yeah.
So
yeah.
So there we have another week, or I should say, another episode in the can. And
yeah, that was a good discussion.
Yes, it really was. I believe we are going to have a guest for young entrepreneurs next week. It may be my son or one of his friends.
Well, I think you're gonna have to do that one without me, because I'm gonna
when are
be,
you,
I'm gone next week.
next week you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we'll wait till the following week. I much prefer to have it with you.
Okay, okay.
All right,
Mhm.
so now we'll say goodbye. And until not next week, until the following week.
2 weeks, in
I
2
don't know
weeks.
why you can't do an episode while you're on vacation.
Well, we did do one when I was out of town.
That's true.
And it did work, but this time it's just not gonna work as well.
No,
So
that's okay. All right, Greg, let's sign off.
all right, Keith.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Yeah, you too.